It's just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Dr. LeRoy Demetrius Horton, DDS, DICIOI, and Dr. Stephen Lowell Paige. Dr. Stephen Lowell Paige, DDS, graduated from Fairleigh Dickinson University in 1975 with a degree in engineering technology and continued his education, receiving his doctor of dental surgery in 1986 from Marquette. He has used his knowledge and materials to enhance his passion in dentistry. He has been placing dental implants for years and enjoys this part of dentistry. He feels that no other discipline of dental work changes patients' ability to eat as comfortably after tooth loss. He also holds a permit for intravenous conscious sedation in order to help patients who exhibit dental anxiety. Dr. Paige and his wife and 3 children enjoy woodworking projects when time allows. Wave, Steve, so they know which one's you. And I didn't want to say the old one. And the younger one is Dr. LeRoy Demetrius Horton, DDS, DICOI, was born and raised in Athens, Greece. He received a degree in biology from Pacific Lutheran University and later a doctor of dental surgery degree from the University of Washington. As a partner in the Affordable Dental Care Network, Dr. Horton focuses on advanced surgical procedures, including but not limited to IV sedation, dental implants, implant dentures, wisdom teeth, bone grafts, sinus lifts, and minor reconstructions. He has devoted many hours to advancing his education and earned his board certification in implants through the International Congress of Oral Implantology. Not only is he a student, but he holds a national recognition as a continuing education instructor by AGD PACE. As a father of 3, he balances owning a practice, family life, and staying active. His hobbies include playing the guitar, reading, and politics. Interests in sports go back to his childhood, where he was an accomplished martial artist, a high school and collegiate track athlete, and more recently competes in Muay Thai kickboxing matches and submission wrestling tournaments. Thus, now you know the original song, Bad Bad LeRoy Brown, was about him, which is amazing because Jim Croce released that song in 73, and LeRoy wasn't even born until 1980. So the prophets even knew this guy was on his way. And my gosh, Dr. Horton, he is presented with a Heart of a Social Worker Award from the Veterans Administration for his work with combat veterans of foreign wars. He also helped found the Partners in Diversity Endowed Scholarship. He currently holds a position as an affiliate instructor at the University of Washington School of Dentistry's Emergency Dental Clinic, where he will be able to pass on his knowledge to eager young dental students. My gosh, University of Washington, your resume goes 89 miles long, but my gosh, I don't even know where to begin with Bad LeRoy Brown. Well, I'll tell you why I invited him to come on there is because we did an article on you on Dental Town, and it was just amazing. Let me see, Dental Town magazine, and it was called Continue Education, Frontline Work. Dr. LeRoy Horton, a board-certified implantologist with 2 practices in the greater Seattle area, takes readers through a step-by-step process of performing an immediate implant placement in the anterior maxilla with discussion of specific principles that will aid in the restorative case. It was an amazing, amazing case, and your course is on Dental Town. It's just, I took the course. It's amazing. But the reason I brought you guys on is because, you were born in Greece and dentistry was born in Paris 200 years ago. And so it's a really old industry, and it kind of, when the industry's when the economy's growing, dentistry will grow maybe 1.5% faster. And when it's contracting, it acts as a luxury item. People stop going to cruises. The cruise line industry has just been decimated and set back a decade. But when you look at the growth in dentistry, the only thing growing in double digits is Invisaligns, clear aligners, and implants. So if you're a young kid and you're just born to dentistry and you just got out of dental kindergarten school, any wise person would take a serious look at clear aligners and implants, because if you're going to pay off $400,000 student loans with a cleaning exam and a filling, you're going to have to work a lot and not spend very much. So thanks for coming on the show today. So my first question is, were you actually born on the south side of the city in Greece that you were born in?
The south side. No, that they got that part of the prophecy wrong in the song. Howard, both me and Steve do want to thank you for bringing us on your platform. We've been longtime fans and followers of Dental Town, and we take this opportunity with great respect for the magnitude of what it is. But I was born in a little suburb of Athens called Glifada. It's about 20-30 minutes outside of the downtown, Athens proper. And it's just a small little town. It wasn't a village of any sort, as people tend to ask me if I'm from one of the village islands or island villages. But yeah, I was there till I was a teenager, and then came here.
So how old were you when you were a teenager? Like 13? How old
13.
were you?
Yeah.
13. I would think, I remember when I was growing up, I had 5 sisters, and we just moved from the east side of Wichita to just the west side in this little town that's only like 380,000 people. And I thought my sisters were just going to just lose it. And you left a country in the eastern hemisphere to a different continent in the other hemisphere. Was that just traumatic? I mean, was that the worst thing you ever went through, or how did that go?
Well, I can definitely honestly say I've been through much worse, but it was a huge culture shock. I mean, you're coming from a very Mediterranean culture in which I was having my own identity issues, being the only Black kid, period, right? My dad was a GI, my mom is Greek. But we lived there. And so, I was the only Black kid in school. I was the only Black kid on the block, in the neighborhood. And so to come here, and I really wasn't well versed in American culture and all the different demographics that are here and different subsets of American culture. So I was kind of an oddball outsider. I was this weird kid with an accent that listened to heavy metal music and played soccer, which I like to take credit for starting that trend, because when you see all the young Black kids now, it's Iron Maiden T-shirts and everyone plays soccer. But at the time, that wasn't cool. So I, didn't really fit in with them. I was still a kid of color with no real social or ethnic identity, because in Greece you're just Greek, right? Whereas here, you're Mexican, you're Puerto Rican, you're Irish, or you're Black, So the first 2 years was me just kind of bouncing around from lunch table to lunch table, trying to find my groove, and my first group of friends was like the goth, all Black wearing, Dungeons and Dragons playing kids who were kind of ostracized in society too. So they kind of saw that I was lost socially, and they pulled me in, and that was probably one of the greatest group of kids I met when I was younger, was the oddballs.
So that's very interesting. You're saying Greece. In Greece, everyone was just Greek. They didn't have all these social identities, subset circles, or whatever. If you're born in Greece, you're Greek.
Yeah, so you're either Greek or you're not Greek, right? So there's a lot of animus and ill will towards immigrants, right? So there's Pakistani immigrants, there's Gypsies, Afghan immigrants, and so forth. But as far as within the Greek community, you're just Greek. And so the culture shock I got here, that and the weather. The weather kicked my butt for the first 6 months, because mind you, I'm coming from Greece. It literally, I may be making this up in my mind and my memory, it rained for a month straight when we got here.
Yeah, man, it's people don't realize that from Seattle to Alaska is a rainforest. Yeah. I mean, everybody thinks a rainforest is in Brazil or in the jungle. They don't think of it that up there. That is really amazing. I remember when I was lecturing next door to Greece in Albania, they were having a feud over the name
Macedonia.
Yes. and it was a serious feud. I mean, it's like, dude, it's a name, and they were not going to let this one go away. How did you see that feud?
I wasn't really invested in it, but definitely most of Europe and Eastern Europe, they take their ethnic politics very seriously. And so, yeah, I mean, the Greeks were, especially the ethnocentric faction of Greece, was completely up in arms over the name. And I think they compromised on like Northern Macedonia as the name, right? Politically, they couldn't call it just Macedonia. They had to call it Northern Macedonia or some variation of that
Well, I got to tell you, my last Greek deal, then we'll move on to implants. But my dad, he delivered bread for 10 years and had 7 kids, and then he decided he's going to start his own restaurant. And when dentists think dentistry is competitive, it's like, yeah, they have 3-day weekends. I mean, a donut store, every donut store in Arid Phoenix has the same hours of 5 a.m. to 10 p.m., 7 days a week, which is why you want to get out of the whole business. And but my dad set up a Sonic drive-in, and we bought the pickles, and we only used the pickles on the hamburger. But Nick Kakulis, who owned Giro's on the Spit next door, he bought the pickles, but he only wanted the pickle juice. So every Sunday, it was my job to take the 5-gallon pickle dills and go over there and strain the juice and give Nick the juice and then strain his and take the pickles. So we would turn our 10 5-gallon dills into just pickles, and Nick's would be, because it's that white sauce. That the secret to that hero sauce is the pickle juice. I think it's the main ingredient. Do you agree?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the pickle juice makes
it sets it off for
but
sure.
I want to start. This is Dentistry Uncensored. I don't want to talk about what everybody agrees in. I want to talk about. I want to lay out the toughest question on you first, and that is the fact that you guys like IV sedation. And when I became a dentist in '87, and then in '94, by starting my own magazine, I became a dental journalist. And malpractice carriers like NICID out of Ohio and all these different places would send me their claims, because a lot of companies do that with media. They always give you press releases, so they want you to be educated. And I noticed every time the claim was $1 million or more, it was always an IV. And my gosh, it's the only thing we do in dentistry. I mean, when you do what can go wrong with a root canal? You got to pull the tooth. I mean, worst case scenario. But IV sedation, do you really recommend that these young kids coming out of school learn that, or do you think it's that's way over their head? Because I see a lot of dentists doing these weekend courses. And they start doing IV sedation, and man, that's some serious dangerous stuff. It's so serious, I never did it. When I looked at it, I just said, no, I'm not fighting that guy. That's too much for me. So how do you wrap your mind around that issue?
You want to take that, Steve?
Bad LeRoy Brown doesn't even want to fight that guy. He's like, Steve, I'm tapping out.
How we look at it is that if you really pay attention to what you're doing, it actually is very, very safe. It's unfortunate that the people that have problems, I don't think took it very seriously. And when they do it, they do things that are dangerous. And the number one problem is a really very simple thing to fix. The number one problem is airway obstruction. They're not paying attention to the patient, and the airway gets obstructed, and that's how especially children die. We don't do children though, but there's been some movements in some states to make it so where the same person who does the sedation cannot do the procedures. But it always fails because the oral surgeons fight it every time and it never passes. I have mixed feelings on it, but I don't think that would be the worst thing in the world, because I think that would really eliminate the problems from happening if the person doing the sedation was just concentrating on the patient well-being that way and let somebody else do the dentistry. Dr. Horton, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's not a space for cowboys. You have to know where your safety margins are, and you have to stay within those safety margins. We did our training through the Oregon Academy of General Dentistry with the Stanley Malamids, the Ken Reeds, the Amanda Ockendijs, who stress safety beyond all other things. And so, we titrate slowly. We are constantly monitoring vitals. We have assistants that are trained repeatedly We go through emergency scenarios. And like Steve said, the number one thing that we watch out for is maintaining that airway.
I love it. When you first said that IV sedation is not a place for cowboys, I thought, I don't even know what that means. I first went to Dallas Cowboys and that guy, that nameless quarterback who's threatening to quit and go somewhere else. But you're right. It's not a high risk place. And what you're right, you just said that it was the key deal, because Britain went through this big time 10 years ago, and they said in United States hospitals, which is the standard of care that we're based on, they broke up the sedation and the surgeon a long time ago, and you're not allowed to do both. Right. And then you get someone like Joan Rivers, a famous comedian, goes to somebody's office where they're doing both. And I'm proud to say that I'm in Phoenix, but everybody in this part of Phoenix, you said you live in Phoenix. I say, no, I live in Ahwatukee, but Ahwatukee's Phoenix is just, they're tribal towards their deal. And we only have one oral surgeon. And 10 years ago, he got an anesthesiologist, but it wasn't even just for safety. It was so he could go so much faster. He goes, my God. And Carl Misch, when I went out to take his program, it's like 7 3-day weekends, he had like 3 patients lined up, draped and asleep. And what blew my mind is whenever Carl was, when you're watching him, it was like a driver who's driving while looking at you. And you're like, I'm not going to talk to you if you don't stare out the damn window. And he's just like dropping all these implants while half the time he's like, and then and it's like, Carl, stare at the jaw. You're doing a surgery. So I really think IV sedation, it doesn't matter what you do. It's like everything is tax deductible till you're sued. Just remember that.
No, absolutely. And I think that a lot of providers need to realize that there's a very thin line between moderate sedation and deep sedation, right? And I think where we've run into trouble with, especially GPs that do moderate sedation, is they push those limits. They don't necessarily prep the patients for what the experience is going to be like. We always tell our patients right off the bat, you're not going to be asleep. You're going to be aware. You're going to have your protective reflexes. I'll be talking to you, but you'll be relaxed. And that's the extent of where I push my sedation is relaxation. Now, there's that amnesic effect. So they assume sometimes that they were asleep. But when you look at our sedation forms, I mean, we don't push the limits of even our recommended max dosages to the program that we took. You know, most everybody just gets a couple milligrams of midazolam, maybe, a few mics of fentanyl, but, we rarely even get to the max doses of the safe range. And that's where we want it, right? Especially if you're doing restorative. It's hard to do restorative with someone that's overly sedated because there's just a lot of water and it becomes cumbersome. Surgery is a lot easier with someone that's a little bit more sedated, but especially if you're doing restorative, in my hands anyway, I just give them a tiny little dose just to take the edge off, maybe slightly more sedated than nitrous would get them. And that's where I keep them. So I think me and Steve have both agreed long time ago that if we're going to do this, safety's got to be the first and foremost priority with our patients.
Yeah, and everything's gotten so much safer. When I got to school in 1987, you're not going to believe this, but nitrous oxide actually was a lethal killing problem because the machine could actually get bumped up to 100%. Right. And so then the manufacturers just made an adjustment to where it would not go over 70, and now that's gone. Right. So, back in the day when I was in school, it was a heavy narcotic, and the only thing to get rid of it is a tincture of time. And now they have, agents and reversals. So it has definitely got safer over the time. Do you agree, Steve, that it's safer today than when you graduated with Pierre?
It was definitely safe. Actually, the one of the guys who worked in the dental school when I went there actually was found dead in the morning because he disconnected the safety feature of the nitrous, and he was found dead because he was breathing 100% nitrous.
So it was an intentional suicide?
Yeah, no, intentional high, which turned into a death warrant,
Oh, so he was trying to get high and went too far. Huh?
Yeah. So when I went, like you, they had made it so you can only go to 70% already.
Yeah. And my gosh. So nitrous oxide, we talked about that. Dental implants. I know you guys are legends and been doing this a long time, but a quarter of my viewers are still stuck in dental kindergarten school. And before we talk about this, I want you to talk to them because although I applaud their enthusiasm, they're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, I love them to death, but they say some of the craziest things. Like I say, well, when you graduate, what do you want to do? And they go, I want to do oral surgery and root canals and pediatric dentistry and silverdime fluoride and Invisalign and prosto and anesthesia and oral face. I mean, it's like slow down, Spanky. I mean, every one of those would take 10,000 hours to master. And so these kids want to come out and they want to just master everything. And, you know, that's taking us back in time. In 1900, healthcare was only 1% of the GDP and there was no specialties. By the end of the century, 2000, healthcare was 14% of the economy. The physicians had 58 specialties. We had 8. And now it's 2020 and we're up to 12. So what would you say to that little kid whose enthusiasm, she thinks she's going to learn it all? And with implants, I mean, in implants, placing an implant, my gosh, that's your journey hasn't even started. Then you're gonna have to restore it. You might have to do a bone graft. You might have to do a sinus lift. I mean, my God, I don't even know if one person could learn everything just about dental implantology. What would you say to that kid?
I want to give a shout out to Steve because Steve's been my not only we've been really good friends, but he was my mentor early on. So I was lucky enough. Not only did I commit myself to continuing education, but in linking up with Steve, I had someone that had the experience that could be a hands-on mentor day to day. And so we're not big proponents of weekend fly-by-night courses to get you from zero to doing all on fours. You have to take your time. You have to get comfortable with the regular surgery that you're expected to do as a general dentist. And me and Steve have seen a lot of associates come and go who they want to jump to implants right away, but they're too timid to lay a flap. They can't take out a broken root canal molar. And so I would advise, students, take your time, gain your education, gain your clinical skill, and find a mentor that can be there and watch you do a lot of your early procedures. Because, putting an implant in on a model versus putting it in a real mouth with, things moving, your anxiety is up, your assistant hasn't done this before, so they can't keep the world steady around you. So, I was lucky in that Steve was my mentor. And I probably learned $100,000 worth of knowledge, that I would have paid in CE courses just by having him there. And I think that's paramount on top of the continuing education is having a real life mentor that can guide you through those early cases. What do you think, Steve?
And I learned it by the School of Hard Knocks and spending a lot of time and a lot of money. Like Dr. Horton's talking about, if someone's not willing to spend the time and spend the money, they should not do it, because all it does is create bad name for general dentists who do things that a few of them do poorly.
Well, okay, you guys just made a great teaching point, and that is these kids, they're going into student loans for their undergrad degree, their dental degree. They come out averaging $400,000 in student loans. And then now all of a sudden it's just, I'm open to the highest bidder, and they just want to go to the highest bidder. And I'm like, whoa. You've been paying 8 years of time and money, and where do you want to end up at the end of the road? Where do you want to, when I lower you into your casket, where are you going to be? And if they say, well, man, I want to be the greatest implantologist of all time, then you sit there and say, okay, so why did you go over here and this guy's not your mentor? And I always tell people, what skill do you think is going to be the hardest to learn that you didn't learn in dental school? Say it's practice management. Well, why don't you, and you got 2 offices to go to, and one does $1 million a year, and all of his staff has been there 10 or 20 years. And your other option, the guy does $750,000 a year, and no one stayed there more than 3 years, but this guy's going to pay you a little bit more money. Well, that's not, so finding a mentor, LeRoy, would you say when you get out of school, they should first find a mentor of who's already at where they want to be someday?
Absolutely. I think that, unless you have a parent that's a dentist, then that's kind of built into your upbringing, right? And so that'll continue after graduating. But I think you're right. Students get out and they're chasing that top dollar reimbursement, as opposed to finding an office that's not only a good fit, but that has someone that's willing to be there and to teach them. Because that's going to be an invaluable amount of learning that you're going to do, that you're actually getting paid to learn. So maybe the going rate here might be $700 a day for a relatively new grad working. Well, there might be a position that's maybe $600 a day, but it's an on-site owner that likes teaching, that likes engaging, their employees and increasing their skill sets. That's going to be more valuable to you long term than getting a couple more dollars per day at the other clinic, where you just kind of thrust into your own, in your own devices, trying to figure out what dentistry is. And Steve, me and you have seen a lot of some of our associates who, have gone to some of the other clinics in the area, but they're the only practicing doctor in that clinic. And, that's might be why they're getting paid a little more, but they're not able to do as much because they're not learning as much,
Right.
Yeah. So my mom used to do this with me, and I don't want to tell anybody because people might think it's creepy, but she used to tell me that when I lay down and go to bed when I was a little kid, Catholics are weird. They read you these poems like, now I lay you down to sleep. So, all these creepy bedtime stories. Well, what was that one? What was that creepy bedtime? Now I lay you down to sleep. I pray the Lord
my
your
soul
soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray. It's like, why are you telling me that I might die before I wake? But she say, Howard, when you pull up the covers at night, you got to lay there on your back and pull it all the way over your face and pretend they just closed the casket. You're dead. Where do you want to be at the end of this journey? She said, you're just a baby now, as in St. Pat's or Blessed Sacrament, Bishop Carroll or Creighton or whatever. She says, you're just a child, but on your journey, where do you want to be at the end? And that's what, we're just a month away from another graduating class of 6,000 dental students. And they're going to come out and they're going to go, I got a license. And it's like, okay, but where do you want to be when you retire? And then you should find someone that just exemplifies exactly where you want to be. And then say, hey, can I go work for you? And if he says no, well, you didn't pay to go to, you didn't get paid when you went to dental school. Say, well, can I volunteer or observe for free or whatever, and you need to find a mentor that's already at exactly where you want to go, especially that guy is hands-on reality, whereas in dental school, I don't want to complain about UMKC. I loved it, but the instructors that only came in one day a week were in reality, and the guys that were institutionalized full time for 20 years. They were somewhere between Pluto and Uranus. And the guys from the real world outside were the godsend of dental school. So, okay. So then the next question I have to ask you is, are you implant agnostic? It's confusing when they see that there's now 600 registered dental implant manufacturers, and 400 of those 600 are just in the country of Italy. I have no idea if they eat titanium for breakfast. I don't know what the hell's going on in Italy. I've lectured there, and I asked them, and they said there's just a lot of titanium industry to begin with, but and then it's confusing because you look at like Danaher, which spun off their dental division into Invista. Well, they got a high-end Noble Biocare, and they got a value Southwest Airlines Neodent, and overheads high, bills over, whatever. But are you, would you buy the Noble Biocare for much more money than the low-cost Neodent, even though they're sold by the same publicly traded company, Invista?
I don't know.
So how would you answer all those questions? Agnostic or not?
Honestly, what I found, and I've tried probably 20 different manufacturers over the years, and I have found that they all work. And but I do have one that I think works better than the others, but I don't know if this would be the platform to go there. So
hell yes, it's the platform. It's Dentistry Uncensored.
Oh, okay, then I'll go there.
Gosh,
I'll
this
go
is like
there.
HBO.
There is no
You
doubt
can
in
even
my
say
mind.
the F word.
All right, there is no doubt in my mind that the implant that integrates the best and the longest is the Ankylose implant, which is now owned by Dentsply. I could show people x-rays that are 15 years old where the bone has literally grown over the top of the implant, and it's almost every single time that I look at one that's been in there 10 or 15 years. It's really hard to believe that nobody hardly uses that system, being that everybody's always touting how great they integrate. But of all the ones I've looked at, that's by far and away the best I've seen. All the other ones I would say are all kind of like on par. They all work just about as good as the other ones. What do you think, Dr. Horton?
Honestly, and it's funny, Howard, we talk about ankylose. Me and Steve have these conversations all the time. Yes, ankylose by far, we've seen the best integration, the best, overgrowth of bone on, over the lips of the implant, but we don't use it, right? Because it's extremely expensive. The implant's expensive, the abutments are expensive. And, Steve was right. All the other systems, your success rate, if you do it properly and you do it right, is going to be in the high 90s, right? So then what you're looking for is, well, which one has the most common sense surgical kit? Which ones has the most common sense prosthetic, complements? And then which ones has reps that you can talk to, that you can get stuff in a reasonable amount of time? So yeah, I mean, I think we were both proponents of conical connection implants,
Yes.
For sure. But when done right, even straight hex implants, non-tapered implants, for the most part, you're going to have the same success rate. It's just that for larger cases, for more heroic cases, you do want those slight, 1% to 2% advantages, because cumulatively, if you're doing an all on 6 or all on 4, you're just trying to maximize every bit of prosthetic and mechanical advantage that you can. But for 95% of your cases, almost any implant, as long as it's FDA approved and good quality, it's going to work for you. So we're pretty much agnostic, but we both acknowledge that in our eyes, we've seen ankylose that we both used to place years ago have the best integration and bone maintenance over time. Yeah. And we think it's because of the Morse taper connection that it has.
Okay, if you say Morse taper, you have to explain what that means.
Okay, so I'll let Steve's the engineer, so he can give you a better explanation of that.
Well, Morse taper is a conical connection where the difference between the cone shape in the implant and the abutment is 1 to 2 degrees. And so it fits so tight in there that the screw that screws down the abutment into the implant really only gets tightened to like 10 or 15 Newton centimeters, because it's the connection itself that holds it. It's called the cold weld. The other implant system that utilizes that is the Bicon system. They don't even have a screw. They just tap it in place. The Morse taper has been used in engineering and in manufacturing processes and many things for over 150 years in the United States. So they just copied it to their implant system, and it works.
Yeah.
There are other systems that use tapers, but they're not 1 to 2 degrees. The degrees varies a lot, but the true Morse taper is 1 to 2 degrees.
And it was born the same year I was. The Ankylose system was developed in 1985 and has been in clinical use since 1987, which was the year I graduated from dental school. And so when I got out of dental school, that was the system. I mean, you're not going to do much better than that. But the thing is, and I shouldn't say this, I'm biting my tongue as I say it, but you guys remember Jerry Nisnik, right?
Oh,
he started,
of course. Yes.
Yeah. Well, he sold his implants direct to who did he sell it to? He sold to Danaher. Now it's spun off. So now Danaher spun it off in Vista. They own Implants Direct and they own Noble BioCare and all that stuff. But my gosh, his 5-year covenant not to compete expires this month. And I guarantee, I know that I have podcasts. He's my buddy, he lives in Palm Springs. He's not going to sit. What's the chance that Jerry Resnick's going to say, "Nah, I'll just sit by the pool and drink a Mai Tai"?
Not until he's dead.
Listen, yeah. Howard, we were at I think it was like an AAID convention back in 2010, I think it was, in Arizona. And some guy comes up and he's giving this, hour-long lecture. And the next guy was Niznik. He came up, and this is, and I follow him on LinkedIn, so I see a lot of his argumentative posts that he does on everybody's, promotional ads. He literally verbatim came out and told the whole group of people, "All right, everybody, everything you just heard was bullshit." He said it just like that. Half the people started clapping, half the people started, grumbling like, "Oh, I can't believe he said that." But yeah, I don't think, and I don't know him personally, but just from the following that I do of him, until he's laid down for good, he's going to be an active player in the game. And I love on LinkedIn, anytime someone makes some claim, he not only disputes it, but he does it a complete article and posts the link to it so that we can all go read his assessment of the promo statement, and then links to articles that basically either debunk or go contrary to what that company was saying, whether it was Nobel or whatever. So yeah, I don't know him, but I'm a huge fan of his.
Well, I'll tell you what, I agree with his remarks and his guts. I remember when, Carl Misch was a legend, and whenever Misch would say something he didn't agree with, he'd always say, well, there's more Misch information. I love, and it explains to me over time more about the nature of a competitive mind. Those minds are so competitive, and they. But anyway, it's good to have all these people fighting for a dental implant. But you guys basically believe that the ankylose dental implant system, you prefer that one the most. It's been out for 30 years. The one thing I always worry about is lawsuits. And again, I see all these lawsuits, and, it's pretty tough to defend when you bought this implant on eBay and it was made in Russia and no one knows where the company is. And you said, well, it's the same as this one over. I mean, so America has 1 million MDs and 1 million attorneys. And you always have to keep your eye over your shoulder, like, what the hell's that guy doing back there? Because it's tough. So we got the ankylose out of the way. And we're just help my homie. She's going to graduate in 2 months from A.T. Still Dental School. And she's got $400,000 bill and never placed a single implant. Walk her through her journey. What should be her first step out the door?
Well, if she's not going to do a residency, right? If she's not going to go into perio or OS or anything like that, then my advice is spend your first 3 or 4 years being a good general practitioner, right? Don't jump to trying to be Michael Jordan. Like, you have to, kind of earn your stripes along the way. You got to get comfortable working in the mouth, working in different patients. You have to be able to build up a temperament for high pressure situations. So that way, as you start increasing your skill sets to newer stuff, whether it's implants or bone grafts, that you have a basis of competency to draw from. When we first graduated, I mean, as much as we like to tout the quality of some of our dental schools, looking back now, I learned maybe 20%, if not less, of what I felt I should have known by the time I graduated from dental school. Everything else was learning in real life situations, or, through having Steve as my mentor. So I would tell anybody, get good at being a general dentist first before you want to, fly too close to the sun. Now, I don't know what you think, Steve.
Yeah, get good at general dentistry. And if you really want to do implants, be a good surgeon first. Be able to feel very comfortable taking teeth out, laying full thickness flaps. I think that's absolute requirement. I wouldn't even work with somebody myself to teach them how to do an implant unless I know that they were capable of doing that very well.
Well, the one thing that I will never forget is cross-training. So we talked about all these different specialties, from oral surgery to dental public health. And Carl Misch, when I asked him, there's all these implantologists. why you? Why do you think everybody is listening to you? And he says, well, it's easy. He says, I started out in removable prosthodontics and I had no interest in fixed. But they would just really annoy me how when their implants broke, they would blame it on the titanium manufacturer. And I'm looking at this case like, well, let's say you screwed up the bite. You did everything wrong in the denture.
Right.
And then you try to nail it down with titanium. He goes, I had to start doing some fixed cases to teach these guys the fundamentals of removable. So you're in affordable denture, and then when I went through the mission institute, and I got my fellowship in the mission institute, my diplomat in the ICOI, and all that kind of stuff. And now it's but when I graduated, LeRoy won't understand this, but when I graduated, we didn't have MRIs and CAT scans. You know what the greatest radiographic miracle that happened in my career? 2 years after I graduated from dental school, they had a new software update, and the pano all of a sudden had a R on the right side and the L on the left side. We were like, holy shit, Spanky, that is so cool. And every patient, when you show them the pano, they go, is that my right side? You're like, yes, sir, Sir Isaac Newton. And but looking back, you know who cleaned up the house after that? Blew my mind. It was a dentist who learned this, and then they went back to their town, and like in Phoenix, everybody thinks they're going to get rich in rich Scottsdale. And these boys went back and found the little denture world and a little manufactured home on the poor side of town, and they bought like an acre ground and a manufactured home, the whole thing for like $400. And then they just slowly upgraded. Everybody would come in for the $299 denture, but he'd say, hey, for you could upgrade it to 2 implants. You could upgrade it to 4, all the way to an all-on 4 for 25 grand. But they would never do the 25 grand because that's what all the Clear Choice does. So they got to break under that 20, go 19,999. and I mean, I don't want to say any numbers because it'll piss some of them off. But one of my classmates from Mich, Chip Castine, went back to Bakersfield, and I can't tell you that last year he broke the $10 million mark, but nobody, remember, if anybody quotes me on that, quoted by Dr. LeRoy Horton said that Chip Castine. But the thing is, no one, if you want to make a bunch of money, they're all looking at Beverly Hills, and they're going to do veneers on movie stars, and he's like, Beverly Hills, man, let's go to Bakersfield. I mean, even Johnny Carson said Bakersfield was the armpit of California, and he went to the armpit, the denture capital, and started telling these people, hey, maybe you want to upgrade to just 2 implants or 4 or 5. And it's just a monster operation. And I saw that take place in the Carolinas, South Carolinas. I mean, I'm thinking in my head, all the dentists I know, Florida, especially northern Florida. Remember, Florida is really 2 states. The southern half of Florida is really northern New Jersey, New York. But the northern half of Florida is really Georgia. And my gosh, they would go back to those denture worlds and they'd buy some mobile home denture world that's doing $300,000 a year and netting 100. And just by upgrading maybe 10 or 20% of the patients to 1, 2, 3, or half dozen implants, now they're $5 million operations. So I would say if I was going to get into implants in a big way, you got to learn how to do removable first. Would you agree or disagree?
Well, I can tell you this: I wouldn't do removable at all if it wasn't for implant supported. If I had to do a denture that was just a plain denture, it goes to the denturist. I won't even do it. Correct, right?
Well, I still do removable. I enjoy it. But you're right. I mean, if all they want to do is be the single implant practitioner, then, God bless them. If they want to do the big cases that they're touting that they want to do, you can't just learn implants. I mean, you have to essentially master removable pros. You have to learn occlusion. You have to, do it enough times to where you can learn what works and what doesn't work with just removable pros before you start slamming a bunch of implants in. I think we've both seen, Steve, a lot of cases come through of doctors that, did a bunch of implants, did a denture, and the denture keeps breaking, or the implants keep failing. And it's because, and what you'll see, Howard, now is that there's a lot of labs that come in and grab these young dentists. and say, you know what, I know you're fresh out of school, but we're going to teach you how to do digital everything. A to Z, everything is going to be digital. You'll be doing the implants, delivering the prosthesis. And they're not learning by taking baby steps on all fronts, like you said, right? They're not doing removable pros. They're not really learning the basic concepts of surgery, but they're getting lured into this world of digital implant surgery. And they're doing, A to Z, therapies, all digital. And the labs are the ones getting these young doctors sold onto this. And that's kind of been one of the messages we've been touting in our lectures that we've been doing for the last couple of years is you have to start small, you have to get good and increase your skill set as you get better and better, but you can't just go from A to Z overnight. And there's a huge industry right now of even though digital technology is great, don't get me wrong, but getting someone that hasn't mastered the basics of what it feels like for an implant to go in when you're freehanding it. What does it look like or feel like when an implant is not quite going in the way it should be? Because you're never going to recognize where the digital, the guide or the plan is going wrong, because there is a margin of error as with everything. You're not going to have the skill set and the knowledge to recognize when it's not acting the way it's supposed to act. And that's where we see implants placed outside of the bony housing, implants placed into neighboring roots, implants placed in areas that can't really support the final prosthesis, especially when we're talking about full arch prostheses. And so, you're right. You have to master or attempt to be good at a lot of areas of dentistry before you can really start attacking some of the bigger cases.
Well said. So on teaching, you talked about teaching, back to ankylose real quick.
Sure.
There was a George Netwig. He did a study that's on PubMed, and basically he shows that on these implants, they had a 98.7% success rate. I mean, since they came out in 1987. But you teach implants. You got a website, teachmeimplants.org, and then your work site's affordabledentalcare.com.
Correct.
And then I don't know what dentalporn.com stands for, but actually,
you got to confuse with somebody else.
Actually,
he just looks like me. I promise you, that's not me.
Actually, you're not going to believe this. But I bought that website domain. If you'd go to dentalporn.com, it takes you right to Dental Town. It was a joke. It was a joke. I played on a guy, but anyway.
I wouldn't be surprised if there is a fetish niche for that, though. There seems to be a niche for everything.
So you started. So you have programs. You start with Implants 101. Learn the basics of diagnosing, digital planning, and placing restoring implants. This course will include information on the different implant systems and designs, as well as their prosthetic components. We also cover basic CBCT software used for planning both basic freehand placement as well as guided placement. Again, when I got my Diplomat implants, no one did guided. I mean, it was a pano. That we didn't know what you were talking about. And then you also have a course on platelet-rich fibrin, sinus augmentation. So talk about your teachmeimplants.org.
Well, Steve, I don't know if you remember much of this, but we started because as owners with multiple practices, we'd always get associates that always wanted to learn the next big thing. Like, oh, I want to do implants. Just like you said, a brand new grad wants to, be Superman or Superwoman right away. And we kind of got caught up in that energy. We said, oh yeah, I'll walk you through your first implant. And then 20 minutes into the surgery, you realize this person has no idea what they're doing. They don't know how to lay a flap. They're shaking. They're approaching from weird angles. And so we decided that we wanted to put together small curriculums to really standardize what our associates knew before we would be okay with them moving on and learning new things that then they would be doing on our patients. And so we did that. It was just for our associates. It was these small little classes. We got really good feedback, primarily because we build the curriculum from the standpoint of being a general dentist that still has to do bread and butter dentistry every day, but you're trying to slowly implement new skill sets into your workflow. Whereas we would see a lot of specialists who were, amazing minds, amazing clinicians. But for instance, I would go to a course, and this is maybe like 3 years, I still take beginners courses because I like to see what the beginning looks like in this day and age, as far as the literature and how they're presenting it. And I also like to see how other people teach, so that way I can, improve my teaching skills. Well, this guy that's out here in Seattle, this very, very, accomplished clinician, brilliant mind, he's teaching this beginner's implant course. Right off the bat, all he's showing is ramus grafts, hip grafts, these large reconstructions. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, the only thing that this audience is taking from this is that we should be referring to you, right?
Exactly.
And so we wanted to develop curriculums that it doesn't matter what level you're at, especially for beginners, you're always going to walk away with 4, 5, 6 pearls that you can implement the very next day. And it may not even be directly related to implants per se, but it might be on, ways of approaching a surgical extraction that will preserve your site for an implant. Ways to reposition or manipulate the soft tissue and so forth. And so our teaching kind of grew out of there. The more the associates wanted to learn, the more colleagues they brought in. We just started getting a lot of local fanfare for some of our courses. And we just said, you know what, if we're going to do this, let's just do it. We're not trying to make a ton of money off of it, but we do want to be opinion leaders in the local community. And we do want to increase the knowledge and the skill set of the general practitioners to benefit the patient population. And it kind of grew from there.
So what did the pandemic, the pandemic must have shut this thing down for a while. I mean, in Arizona, we couldn't practice from St. Patrick's Day to Cinco de Mayo. I remember getting drunk and passing out and St. Patrick's Day, and then I woke up underneath a margarita table, and they said we can go back to work. Are you guys back to pre-pandemic? Are you back at it?
Not yet.
So when do you give us a COVID update now? Where does it look like now?
I would say we're only operating about 80% right now. Patients are still, I think, fearful of coming to the dentist unless they perceive they really need to go. I think some are still fearful. What's your feeling?
I think it's partly that, and then also, it's hard to juggle staff when someone feels ill. Now they got to quarantine for a couple of days, or they got to go get a test, and it might take 3 to 5 days to get the results back, and so you're kind of down assistants. We've had, some staffers actually contract COVID, other ones where family members contracted, so then they had to quarantine for 2 weeks. So I think that's also played into how many patients we're able to see, because at any given time, we might be fully staffed, or at another time, we might have, 2 employees that are quarantined because they were in contact with somebody. Now that, most all our staff have the vaccine, we're able, the guidelines are a little different, so it's kind of getting back to normal. But I still see several, I would say patients a week that cancel their appointments that they had made like 6 months ago for their checkup cleanings or a year ago, due to just not feeling safe venturing out into the world yet.
But what about the classroom as far as the dentist learning how to place implants?
I tell you this much, Steve, I'm going to rag on you for a little bit here. As much technical difficulties we had with Steve in the beginning, he's gotten a lot better because of the pandemic, because we did a number of Zoom classes. So he's had to learn how to utilize the laptop and the plug-in speakers and video cam and all that kind of stuff. So we just did what everyone else did. I mean, thankfully the industry came together, and you saw big names, whether it was Howard Gluckman, Maurice Salama, like all these big names doing free webinars the entire initial 3-4 months. And I took a lot of them because I'm a CE junkie, but then we ended up taking a lot of our lectures and make them into small 1 or 2 hour kind of condensed webinars that we just did for free. But now I think we've done one course since things have opened back up. We did a PRF course with the live surgery. And then we are planning another one for kind of late summer. And that's kind of been our most popular course, has been the platelet-rich fibrin course.
And you're in the Seattle area. I mean, does the are they do you think they're going to have an annual meeting that's live and classroom style? Have you talked to Bracken Kilback at Washington Dental Association, or do you think it's still going to be virtual? In fact, why don't you just give us an update on COVID? I mean, I'm in Phoenix, and remember, Phoenix is the Florida of the West. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And so even during the height of when you should be scared underneath your house, thinking of you're going to get killed by this, traffic only went down like 20% in Arizona. And
Really?
and now everybody I know around here is like, I've had both of my vaccines. Everybody I know has, and to me, it just seems completely back to normal. But you know, the person I podcasted before you is in Ireland, and they're under lockdown, and it's just going crazy in Brazil and India. But how does COVID look in Seattle, Washington right now?
It's been a pleasure driving. It's been a pleasure driving in Seattle for the past year. It's almost like you're in a small town driving downtown now.
Yeah. Yeah. And totally we actually, the scary part is though, that numbers are starting to go back up, right? That all the states, even ours, even though Inslee, our governor here, has been pretty good about, you know, being strict and locking things down, you know, for the well-being of everybody. And we held the numbers pretty well contained. As numbers go down, they release do a press release saying, okay, we're moving on to phase 3. People lose their mind, right? You see bars are full, you know, nightclubs, all that kind of stuff. And now even though we've been vaccinating a lot, the numbers have started creeping up. So we rolled back into somewhat of a phase 2 again. So a lot of the restaurants have gone from 50% capacity back down to 25% capacity in certain counties because the numbers were creeping up. So, but yeah, I mean, we had my commute I live in Tacoma, Washington, and I drive to Bellevue. My commute on any given day pre-pandemic was maybe an hour and 15 minutes. Now it's 45 minutes. You know, and I hate to celebrate something that is involved in the pandemic, but, you know, traffic has gotten way better. And I'm hoping it stays that way. I'm hoping a lot of people, a lot of companies realize that they can work from home, because Seattle has gotten so congested right now that it's on par. I think it made like top 5 worst traffic in the nation at some point pre-pandemic.
Wow. But do you think do you think Seattle, what do you think their state meeting? I mean, when do you think they'll have normal state meetings? I mean, like I was kind of excited. The Greater New York is this November, and I'm very excited about going to that meeting because now the governor just said they will no longer prosecute for prostitution or marijuana. And I'm like, holy moly, it's time to go back to the Greater New York meeting.
We got to book our tickets right now.
But if you had to bet, that's a long way away, November 25th. Do you really think this coming November, I mean, right now it's April 21st, May, June, July, August, September, October, November. Do you think 7 months from now, the Greater New York will really have their meeting in place and half the exhibitors will be hookers and weed sellers?
I think they'll have the meeting. I don't know about the hookers and the weed sellers, but I think the meeting.
You think they'll have the meeting?
I think it'll be a hybrid. I think everything is going to go to a hybrid version now. So, you know, instead of everyone having to fly in for the meeting, you'll be able to watch all your webinars, you know, and they're having exhibitor, you know, pages on all the webinars, conventions that we've seen so far. So, I think it'll be a mix of two. They might cap how many in-person people they'll have. And then the rest will just all be, you know, people logging in from their little corner of the world.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. I mean, and it saves people money. I mean, not every for a lot of us. I mean, Steve and I used to use conventions as just an excuse to get away from the wife and kids and go out to whatever different state and get into whatever trouble we wanted to get into and learn something while we're there, right? So that kind of sucks a little bit that we've lost that ability to get out and but there's some meetings, like there's the ICOI in Germany that I wouldn't have been able to make, but now I can still view the content.
Right.
So I think most everything is going towards a hybrid version now.
Okay, so now I'm going to ask you a question about the most controversial thing Carl Misch said on my podcast, and believe me, I heard a lot of it. Remember, I don't make the news. I don't write the news. I just, media companies would just share the news.
Right.
But in his last days, he thought the drawn blood thing, he said that he said, I don't see the research for it. And I got a lot of buddies that place a lot of them. And I around here, and I thought it was interesting on his remarks. Some said, well, I don't even care if it does all that other stuff. It just helps me with the putty to do the surgery. You know what I mean? Like I
Right.
use it. It's my Play-Doh. And other people say, oh no, they believe the deal. But Carl said on the show that it was voodoo and they didn't have the research or leg to stand on. Would you call that misinformation or because you on your website, if you go to teachmeimplants.org, you have a course on this, and it's your most popular course. So your most popular course is the one that Carl doesn't want to take.
Well, I'd only agree as far as that people are touting PRF to grow bone in ways that it's not going to happen. And I think that's what he's talking about. But as far as healing ability, and I think doing a better job with bone grafting, I have definitely seen the improvements every single time that I use it. But if you're going to say that your bone graft is going to grow bigger and better just because you use PRF, yes, that's not true.
Yeah, I think that's, Howard, that's a culture war that's within our industry, right? So you do have, and I'm not going to name names. There's a group of very well-known, well-marketed, lecturers that make very wild claims about what PRF does, and that's we are not associated with that. So there is a culture where, essentially, before PRF, everything that we've done still had a very high success rate if it's done right. And PRF is not any silver bullet by any means. As an adjunct, and this is what I always say in all my courses, it is an adjunct to good surgical technique and sound surgical principles. So everything that we do would work without PRF, right? What we're doing is we're adding some extra growth factors. We're adding the extra benefit of the increased utility that you get by using the platelet factors in conjunction with the bone graft, the ease of use. We're adding the soft tissue benefit to the healing. And if anyone that's ever done PRF versus, and what I have to compare is the first half of my career before I started doing PRF, I compare that experience to my second half. The increase, or the improvement in soft tissue healing, and that's, there is some research to back that up, although some of how you assess that can be called subjective, right? Because you're looking and seeing how well something grows. But, in my anecdotal experience, I can absolutely tell you the benefit to the soft tissue healing that I get and the decrease in morbidity. And I compare that directly to, the first half of my career before I started using PRF. And I think, Steve, you'd probably agree with that, right?
Yeah, the difference in the soft tissue healing, it's so evident. Anybody that says it's not, it's just not true. It's extremely evident that the soft tissue heals faster, better, and I do think there is a contributing factor to helping the bone graft be more successful. I just don't think you necessarily would get more bone just by using PRF. I just think the success overall of the surgery will be improved.
Right. But you can't really argue with added growth factors as a concept in general, right? Because these same practitioners who may have, contrary opinions about PRF will then also use, exogenous growth factors. And if we're saying, hey, we've got a process that's all natural, that takes, 1 to 2 minutes of your time to do, that's inexpensive, you can definitely add some growth factors to your site, then I don't see the logical argument against it when these same practitioners will spend hundreds, if not thousands of dollars in additive exogenous growth factors to the site, But you're absolutely right. I mean, we've been in conventions where someone will lecture and make these wild claims of growing vertical and horizontal bone with nothing but PRF and stitches, right? And, me and Steve will just sit there and just chuckle to ourselves. And we've actually seen moderators or the MCs of some of these conventions come up and they're trying to hold their tongue because they know that half of what they just heard was bullshit. So I wouldn't say, let's just call that a misinformation with some context to it.
Well, humans are very bizarre creatures. I mean, my 2 oldest sisters are nuns, and when I have conversations with them, sometimes I'm speechless. I mean, I don't even know what to say. I can't even wrap my mind around it to answer. Hey, I want to ask you a logistics question. You guys are with Affordable Dental Care.
Yes.
In Bellevue, Washington. And that Affordable Dental, I mean, there's the big chain Affordable Care, also known as Affordable Dentures and Dental Implants, Dentures and Dental Implant Service. Is that a franchise or a part of them? Or
No.
You guys are totally separate.
Steve, tell that story. Are you allowed to tell the story?
I don't think so, but Affordable Dentures is a big corporate thing, and we're Affordable Dental Care. It's just a small group of privately owned offices that work together in marketing their offices, right? And they're all individually owned and individually operated. The name did cause some confusion a while back, and we took care of that.
Well, do you does that group have what if someone wanted to join that group? Do you have a website just for that group, or is that just because I have affordabledentalcare.com? Is that the only website?
That's our website.
Okay,
that
so
is our
that's
website, affordabledentalcare.com.
Yeah, so what you're doing is how I grew up. When I grew up, all the farmers that have co-ops, I mean, you don't want a grain elevator just for you. You don't want a dehydrating your pellets just for you. So a bunch of farmers, wheat farmers, they'd get together and form a co-op. And I've seen that lecturing around for 30 years where, you go to a town of like, say, 250,000. And there's these 4 dentists meeting up at the bar, and one's from the north, one's from the south, one's from the east, one's from the west. And they go, my God, Facebook and Alphabet, Google and YouTube have sucked up about 85% of all the advertising dollars in the United States, which has made billboards and radio stations and newspapers, the advertising is just cheap, but you can't advertise like that if you're only on the south side, so forming a co-op, I mean, I've seen it just become legendary by dentists all around. So is that what you kind of are, a co-op?
No, it's not a co-op, but I guess you could say the advertising part of it is a co-op, because once again, you could utilize your dollars for advertising more effective when you're doing it for a lot of people. And we're not on top of each other, so we don't affect each other's patient load. We just I guess maximizing advertising dollars. Wouldn't you say that pretty much what sums it up?
Yeah, I mean, being that we're all privately owned, we also all share some ownership, right? So me and Steve are partnered in Bellevue, and in the Covington office, Steve is partnered with another doctor, Dr. Clade, in the Tacoma office. And before some of the other locations were sold off, they were, owned or partly owned by Steve and other partners. And there's a great cooperation. I mean, I travel between multiple locations and do implants for them or sedation for them. But like Steve said, we're able to be a co-op as far as marketing. We're able to be a co-op as far as ordering, So, we're able, when Patterson comes to us or Henry Schein comes to us and they want to make a deal, we can leverage and say, hey, we're kind of affiliated with a number of offices. If you give us a good package, I'll take it to all the other owners. And if they buy in, we want these prices. So there's that advantage, but it's not necessarily born out of a growth model. A lot of the offices that were added or taken away was just very organically formed, right? I may have been a partner with Steve. I was an associate first, and then he needed a partner in one office, so I bought in there. He may have had another associate that wanted to own an office, and so they both went in a different location and built out an office. So it wasn't necessarily this model that you see with the DSOs, where it's, you know, at all costs you have to grow. It's very kind of local and homegrown.
So you have 5 locations, is that what you said? 5 locations?
Correct.
And how many, and then Steve, you have a partner in each one of those 5 locations?
Yes.
So you have 5 partners?
By myself. I don't own anything by myself anymore.
So you have 5 partners in 5 offices.
Pretty much, but now we sometimes have less than 5 because some have been sold off to people who either worked for me or who wanted to buy. So I've been divesting myself some of my practices. So there are Dr. Horton, how many affordables are left right now? There's
I think there's 5 on our site, and I don't know if the Renton office, did she stay as an affordable?
No, they changed the name.
And then what about Arlington?
Change the name, right?
Yeah, so there's only 5 right now.
There's 5 left. Okay, yeah.
No, well, I want to ask you as the mentor and what do you call it? The mentoree?
The mentoree.
Well, you know, the basic problem. I mean, you know, I just diagnose it. You know, I don't have a dog in the game. I just diagnose what I see, and what I see is then there's not a single DSO in America that could do an IPO. Okay, Wall Street doesn't want to touch them.
They don't. Yes.
Yeah, I got 41,000 followers on LinkedIn, and that's the business side of dentistry. All the dentists are on Dental Town, Instagram, Twitter, whatever, YouTube. But the business of dentistry is on LinkedIn. And for years, I always get these Wall Street analysts saying, I don't get this deal. You're a dentist with an MBA, and they show me the numbers. I'm like, well, what do you not get? And they go, well, they're just buying earnings. I mean, you know, you give them $1 million, they buy $1 million dental office. They say, look, we grew to $1 million. You give them 10 million. Now they buy 10 millions of earnings, but 2 things happen. Their earnings equals their total debt. And when they buy the company, they have no way can they recoup in savings and efficiencies to compensate for the 17% they want to take off the top. And they go, this is, you know, so it doesn't work. So we know that they can't, none of them can go public, but I don't want to address that. Right. I want to address this, and that is, you know, the fastest growing industry on LinkedIn in dentistry is to recruit a doc. I mean, if you can deliver a doc to a box, they'll give you $5,000 and they'll burn that doc away in a year. I mean, the turnover is off the charts. Yeah. So you're an old wise man. You got a young protege mentoree that speaks highly of you and loves you and respects you. What advice would you give to older doctors in attracting, retaining young dentists like LeRoy, and when they come out of school, not burn them and churn them in a year, but actually get the kid to grow up there and become all that he can be, which was his goal in the first place?
Yeah, well, okay. I'll tell you this without tooting my own horn too loudly. I've heard from probably 50 associates over the years. I've done this for 36 years. I've heard from almost every one of them that I've done more dentistry in 3 months working for you than I've done for someone else in 2 years. Because we've always done our own root canals, extractions, implants, and someone who wants to learn, who shows me that it's somebody that I can feel comfortable showing them, they have all told me that they have learned so much from me that they could never have replaced that. And that's without being, that's trying to stay modest.
Right. And Howard, we don't operate off of, statistical reports and all that. I've had friends that have worked for DSOs, and they almost get sucked in like a multi-level marketing scheme, right? Oh, well, if you come in, you could do this much, but if you work a little harder, you could do this much. And then, and there's this promise of great financial wealth when you work with them. But the whole time, every one of my friends said they were bombarded with reports and comparing them to these, what they seem to think now are fictional doctors in other locations that are doing these many CEREC inlays and these many CEREC crowns. And there's a cookie cutter program that they push on these doctors that the doctors, can't always handle as far as their ability to move that fast and juggle that many patients. And a lot of them that I've talked to anyway do feel that there is some moral conflict in pushing these cookie cutter treatment plans on their patients, especially when you're looking at, well, this treatment may be covered, a composite filling, but we don't do composite fillings here. We do CEREC inlays and that's it, and so not only do they get burned out by being pushed constantly, but they're expected to be these used car salesmen pushing these treatments that sometimes they don't agree with. And that has never been our model. Our model is, you will do a lot of dentistry, but you're also going to be able to sleep very nice at night, and you'll get compensated well, and you're going to be a resource to the community. Our prices are a little lower. We are PPO'd with most of the insurances, which has been a struggle now, especially with expenditures going up, cost of PPE and so forth, and insurances have been squeezing us. But our model has been, teaching, encouraging good treatment, sound treatment, and being highly involved with our associates. And that's where I think we really differ from the DSOs. What do you think, Steve?
And continue to answer the question that asked us, I think the key word is mentorship. In other words, what we have done with our associates is we do take the time to teach them and mentor them, where another owner might want someone there just to be a producer, like you're saying, and all they worry about is that at the end of the day, they produce more dentistry so they can make more money off of them, but there's no real time in teaching them how to be a better dentist. And we have always really worked with our dentists to show them what they can be.
Right. The coachable ones, Howard, because there's a lot of type A's in our field, and not everybody is very coachable. So when we get a young coachable associate, they usually do fairly well. But there's some that just, they're set in their ways despite, their experience or lack thereof. But yeah, mentorship is huge in our business model.
Well, what you just said, LeRoy, at the very end is why I tell them to just go start their own practice, because the people that become dentists, physicians, and lawyers aren't the type of people that just take orders and go do the order. They got 8 years of college. They always think and process. They're horrible employees. They're like herding cats. And if you want to have 1 million employees, you should go into the military where they're all 18 or under 21, or go to Walmart where the vast majority are just a high school education or whatever. But my God, you couldn't get 10 dentists to agree that today is Tuesday. You put up a case on Dental Town, and they'll put up a case like someone like chipped their teeth, and someone's like, "Oh man, I'd do a veneer. Oh no, I'd do 8 veneers. No, I'd extract all their teeth and do it all in 4. No, it's like, dudes, just settle down, just smooth out that chip. I look at cases they're doing, and I have a hard time getting over the all-on-4 or the 4 bicuspid extraction. And, but I don't think 2 dentists ever, and proof that. We have absolute proof of that. You got to remember when 1987, let me pull it up here. In 1987, yeah, right here, it was, my gosh, this was a dark day in dentistry. It was in 1997, Reader's Digest came out and said, with an article, front page cover, "How Dentists Are Ripping You Off." And it was by Pulitzer Prize winning William Eckenberg. It was great journalism, but basically he got an FMX and study models, went to 30 different dentists, and guess how many treatment plans he got?
Right.
30. So then the government, the NIDR, said, okay, is this weird journalism or is this real? So they redid the study with 100, and they only got 2 treatment plans the same. That was the 2 guys who said she needed nothing. And then treatment plan 3 to 100. So, I mean, if you look at the research from the patient's point of view, the Reader's Digest point of view, dentistry is an art and a science. It's not math. It's not geometry. Like, you're from Greece, the land of sine, cosine, and tangent was born there. I mean, that doesn't apply to dentistry. You don't look at when's the last time you mathematically used Pythagoras' theorem and got the exact treatment plan? I mean, my gosh, it's all over the field. So how do you prepare a kid for that?
Well, one thing that I do with all my associates is I define the gray zone, right? For instance, in our practice, we don't do clinical crown lengthening. And so, if a tooth if you're going to be doing heroics, it has to be within the confines of, you can't do clinical crown lengthening in our business model. Okay. And then anything within that gray zone, we just have to, trust and honor the other professionals, diagnostic opinion. There are some things that I feel very strongly about that I may say, okay, we don't do amalgams per se, right? In our practice, but there's really, if a young associate comes in and they feel very strongly about it, as long as I've defined what the parameters of that gray zone are, then I feel they have enough freedom to still feel like they're autonomous. And then even if I don't 100% agree with their diagnosis or their treatment, I still honor it because, they have their own skill set and expertise that they're bringing to the table too. You just have to set parameters, because you're right. If you have, 3 offices with 6 associates, and sometimes you might be sharing patients, there has to be some agreement in what we're going to do with someone else's treatment plan. Will we respect it? Will we, Steve, you've seen people, watch something to death, right?
Yeah.
The lesion is this big, they watch it. It's this big, they watch it. It's this big, they watch it. Only 2 years later to fill it, right? But are you justified in filling it here or here or here? Well, that's a philosophical argument you can make, but it's a gray zone that we've kind of all accepted that we're going to have in the profession.
But in general, it's interesting, the study that Howard just talked about. They have 100 different treatment plans for 100 patients. We really find that if we did 100 treatment plans with our various associates, we're finding out probably about 90% of them are the same. I'm not finding that much difference. I mean, about when you're watching the associates, aren't you finding that it seems to be okay for the most part?
I mean, every time I do a second opinion, half the time I don't even know what to say. I mean, because usually it's like, okay, you have 11. Okay, you need 11 crown cavities, 6 crowns, and a root canal, and I'm like, you have gingivitis. It's Arizona's a weird place because our governor. I agreed with what he did, and that is, well, first of all, I can't stand the government, never have. I mean, I don't know what you read in the 5,000 years of history where they were ever the good guy. I mean, for 5,000 years, they've been the worst part of humanity. And like even this virus. I mean, let me just go on around and say this. Everybody's all upset and concerned that this virus has now claimed the lives of 3 million people. Hey, buddy, World War II took 75 million, and World War I took 40 million. I was just so... Thank God we were attacked by another species instead of going to kill each other. Because if there's one thing human governments like to do, and that is slaughter each other. I remember in China, when I was lecturing in China, I said, is it true Mao Zedong really killed 70 million people in the Cultural Revolution? And he goes, oh, that's complete American propaganda. He only killed 50 million. I'm like, oh, sorry, I was off 20 million people. But the bottom line is... I loved when we were attacked by a virus. It pulled us all together, and it showed us, how when we all work together, they come out with several vaccines in a year, as opposed to tearing us apart. Remember, World War II got over in 1945, and they left 2 cities in Japan nuked, and Germany was leveled. And when I graduated from high school, that's when those 2 countries were celebrating that the Reconstruction was over. It took from 1945 to 80. Every kid that would have gone to dental school and college and graduated and became an implantologist was just to rebuild everything that was leveled from 45 to 80. And my gosh, you know, dentists, I mean, as long as you, everybody's working together and trying to move into the future, but I tell dentists, you're never going to agree with anyone else. So I know dentist politics, and that is they only stand in front of the mirror and talk to themselves all day long. So just go start your own practice. And if they're like, well, I'm afraid I might go bankrupt. Yeah, only 1% of dentists ever go bankrupt, and they all have their license taken away for alcohol, cocaine. And if that's your problem, come party with me the night before you go out. And so just open up your own and try to have an open mind. And I know you're smart. I mean, you only got into dental school because you're the smartest guy in the class in math, physics, chemistry, biology. And that's probably why you don't listen to anyone else, because you're just always used to knowing the answer yourself. But I really do appreciate you guys coming on here.
This has been fun.
And talking to my homies for an hour. And I just want your last thought again. I'm not worried about the old, fat, bald guys. I mean, you know, what are we worried about? That we're going to lose some money in the next market correction? I've lived through 4 market corrections. I graduated from high school in 80. 87, I graduated. Black Monday was in October. Y2K was 2000. Lehman's Day was August 15th, 2008. I mean, I don't give a shit about a contraction. I mean, if your hold period's longer than 10 years, it won't matter, because if you're going to hold your stocks longer than 10 years, you'll go through that crash and another bubble and another crash in that amount of time. But I am worried about the kids because, and I don't know if Stephen agrees with me, but I just think it was a lot easier to graduate to become a dentist in 87 than it was
definitely
in
was.
2021.
Definitely was. Yeah, it was.
So I feel it's old guys' responsibility to transfer. Knowledge has no value unless it's transferable to our replacements. And I just like to go out there and get all these old guys' knowledge and transfer it to these kids coming out of dental kindergarten school. So your final thought, what are you going to tell the next graduation class that's going to roll out in the next month?
Okay, I would say that when I graduated, or how we graduated, you could do fillings, crowns, and bridges, and you can make a living, and you can refer out anything that you didn't feel comfortable doing. Today, if you don't learn to be a real general dentist, fully rounded out, you are going to have a difficult time making a living.
No, that's very true. If I can piggyback off that, Howard, when I was at, you know, even though I'm a little younger than both of you, when I was at University of Washington, I graduated in 2007. Tuition was $14,000 a year. Okay. Flash forward now, it's upwards of 70,000. And because I'm an instructor, I can tell you, there's not a proportional increase in the quality of education that they're getting. They're just graduating with more debt. And so my advice would be, you know, yes, you do have to be concerned with earning a living and paying off this debt, but you remember why you got into this. You got into this to help people, to be a good clinician, to provide a much needed service to the community and the people around you. And try your best, despite the fact that you might be drowning in debt and have all these obligations, try your best to hold on to that. Because that's where we see a lot of doctors kind of lose their way when they only end up seeing this as a means to a financial end. And I really want us to do something about the industry to get it back to the original purpose was, you know, which, you know, although albeit it sounds cheesy, we just want to help people. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And it's true.
Yeah.
I mean, I broke my dad's heart because I didn't follow him into Sonic Drive-In. And, you know, my next door neighbor was a dentist, Kenny Anderson, and I'd go to work at Sonic, and Dad was the love of my life, but it's a Sonic Drive-In. Do they have those in Seattle, Sonic Drive-Ins?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we made cheeseburgers and chili dogs, and it's like, Dad, I love you, but next door was Kenny, and you got to remember, this has been the 7th grade. This there was no computers and all that. The technology of the day in my world was this x-ray machine he had, and it looked right through a tooth, and then they take the x-ray. You got to go in the dark room with like the hottest dental assistant you ever saw in your life. And when she shut the door, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm standing in here. And it was so, and he'd do root canals. And I mean, it was just, I mean, I couldn't go make a cheeseburger. My dad was like, Howie, by, 8 years of college, in 8 years, you'd already have 4 Sonics to be a retired millionaire. And it's like, well, I'm a kid. I want to play. I don't want to be a retired millionaire or a kid. I want to get this x-ray. That's all I wanted was that damn x-ray machine to look through a tooth. And that's why I tell when these kids say to me, they go, do you want to be a pediatric dentist? Well, personally, I'd rather go to hell for eternity. But if that's what you want to do, no, I think I would choose Lucifer as a roommate. But if I tell them, if you really want to be a pediatric dentist, and I'm talking that you've already had a complete psych workup, eval, and they've taken a MRI, and there's not like some lemon stuck in your head, and if that's what you want to do and that's what you love, that's what you have to do because you only live once, and if you love what you do, you'll never work another day in your life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so just so thanks for loving dentistry. It's always an honor to share a profession with people like you.
This was a pleasure, my man. This was immensely fun. We love and respect you. Thank you for having us on your platform. And I mean, I think I got some more content coming out on in some of your publications. So I look forward to a long, fruitful professional relationship, man.
Please, you did that frontline anterior implant continuing education for us. God, I'd love to have more courses, more or videos, or any format you want.
Yeah.
My gosh.
May issue. I got an article coming out. It's not a CE article, but it is an article. So we'll keep an eye on that.
All right. Thank you guys for all you do. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
All right. Thank you.